Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar on cloud-based accounting. Thanks for attending. My name's Josh and I'm the marketing executive here at Bluecube. We're very lucky to have Nicky with us today. He's going to talk us through cloud-based accounting, what it can do for you and your organisation, and most importantly, how not to get duped by the multitude of cloud suppliers out there. This can be a little bit tricky sometimes, as many of them don't actually offer a true cloud service, but they're happy to insinuate as such. So Nicky is going to be clearing those blurred lines in a bid to help you make an informed decision should you wish to make the move to a cloud-based financial system. Over to you, Nicky.
Thanks very much, Josh. Yeah, so my name is Nicky. I head up the customer engagement team at Bluecube, and as Josh says, part of what we do is work with our own existing customers and new customers coming to Bluecube to help them understand the differences in cloud solutions. We provide both, but most of our customers now move to cloud. And we also talk them through ways to get more out of their finance software, ways to solve challenges and problems that they're experiencing. In terms of what we're going to cover today, we will give you a brief overview of specifically what cloud accounting is. We'll talk you through the benefits and how it can benefit you, and then we will go through some key questions that we would encourage you to use when thinking of comparing cloud suppliers. Cloud-based accounting. In simple terms, there's two elements to it. One is about storage, about where that system is stored, and the other is about user experience. So a cloud-based system is one which is accessed via the internet instead of being held on site. Now, a few months ago, arguably, most people were less concerned by this, but you have a global pandemic such as COVID, and suddenly everyone becomes painfully aware of how they access their systems, particularly when they're having to embark on working from home. Cloud-based accounting is a good example of software as a service. Now, in terms of what that means, if you're not familiar with those terms, if you think of how you may have used streaming services like Spotify by comparison to what we would have done in the past, I hope I'll be not the only person that can remember having a tape deck in their car. But if you think about how that's moved forward from tape to CD through to iPods that are holding 30, 60 gigabytes worth of music, those are all good examples of localized storage. And now we're in a world where actually we use streaming services like Spotify and others, and we probably are completely unaware of when we're listening to music on whether it is stored on our mobile phone or whether it's actually being accessed through the cloud. And that's a very clear change in how we store data. From a user experience perspective, a good analogy is looking at email. And so when we all first started using email, I think we all were using Outlook, and you'd install Outlook on your computer. You would download your emails to that computer. And again, it's a localized access, despite the fact that the emails are being sent over the internet. But now with things like Gmail and other providers, you're actually logging into a portal and you can access that anywhere. You don't need to have any software locally installed. You might have a hybrid where, for example, you've got the Gmail app. So that is something that is a client install, but actually the entire interface is still being delivered through the cloud. So why does it benefit finance teams at all? Well, obviously, access is a clear one, and as I say, we have all become painfully aware of access to systems. And if you've had a cloud solution, then hopefully you will have found that working from home it really presents much fewer challenges as long as you have an internet connection and a browser. But there's a lot more to cloud which people underestimate. So updates are one. In times gone by with on-premise software solutions, you'd have had to have waited quite a long time for the next version of the software to come out, which might have had a vital bug fix or new piece of functionality. Updates with cloud solutions are usually much more frequent, and often taken care of by a supplier outside of business hours, and sometimes unbeknownst now to the consumer. You can be receiving updates and they're deployed without you even realizing that you've moved on to a new version. That means that you are always getting the very best from your software, and it should be optimized in that way. You also have access to far higher specifications in terms of technology and security. It's a simple economy of scale. Most cloud solutions are using very, very large blade servers and cutting edge security protocols, which if you try to replicate in your own office environment locally, it simply would be cost prohibitive. So you get a very, very different experience with a cloud system in terms of performance and security that you simply wouldn't be able to achieve using your own technology. It also simply eliminates the space and cost element of the hardware. A good example is a few years ago, the Inland Revenue moved all of their systems onto the cloud, and they were able to publish several £1 million worth of savings simply on electricity in terms of what they were having to consume by keeping localized servers in their buildings. Sadly, that saving did not get passed back to all of us, but it is startling actually how much it can cost to keep servers running in an office 24 hours a day, keeping them cool and keeping them secure. And it enables you to adapt with how your business changes. We've talked about COVID. I promise I won't keep hammering that point home, but that is one example where a massive change enables you to react quickly. But there's other things as well that's starting to become more commonplace. So a good example, if you think of how we now can consume TV and have different subscriptions, so that you could have a sports subscription during the football season, and as the football season ends, you can then switch that sports subscription off. That's becoming something that's available within business systems too. Within cloud accounting, an example might be you have a complex reporting tool, but you only really need it for 1 month of the year when you're doing all of your year-end planning and doing all of your planning for the future for the year. Afterwards, you may then say, actually, we don't need that reporting tool, and we can save on the cost of it. So cloud systems enable you to do that more easily. And it's all wrapped up in a monthly regular charge because it's software as a service rather than a software purchase. Gone are the days where you're having to pay large upfront license costs and speculating on purchasing a piece of software for 5 to 10 years. Now it's much more easy to structure your cash flow because you're simply paying a monthly payment. So if you are thinking of comparing cloud suppliers, clearly there's a lot more that you need to consider other than cost. We're going to take you through questions that we recommend people ask of other suppliers when thinking this through, and also talk you through the answers you might want to look out for too. So what questions should you be asking? Is server and hardware included? Now, arguably, if you are paying for hardware as part of a cloud accounting package, then it is not truly a cloud solution. However, I have seen quotes from other suppliers where that is the case. And really at that point, sometimes what you're looking at is you're paying for a supplier to effectively still provide an on-premise solution. It's just they're providing it on their premises and then giving you a virtual network access to that. That might suit you, but it's not really a cloud solution. True cloud, I wouldn't expect to see a consumer having to bear any of the cost of server hardware. And it's important to understand what happens when things get upgraded, because a true cloud supplier should be continuously thinking about keeping their technology upgraded, and that isn't a cost that you want being passed on to you. Where is your data being held? So if we think about Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Cloud, Those are massive solutions worldwide. Now, they're very suitable for things like music, for storing your own personal items, personal photos, and it doesn't matter whether that's being moved around different servers all the way around the world. When it comes to finance data, you might find you're actually legally responsible for holding it in the UK. And also, if it is held in the UK, it is protected by UK data law. It doesn't matter whether the software supplier is based in the UK or not, it is physically, where does that data held? Another thing that we've spec'd when we looked at our own cloud solution was we use Oracle technology, that we're an Oracle partner. Now, we've dealt with a situation where we had to rescue a group of organizations because they had a cloud solution where they were actually all able to see each other's data because it wasn't built on robust technology. Now, we had to sign an NDA, so I can't tell you who the customer was or who the competitor was, but it is worth understanding how your data is going to be held and what protections there are, and ensuring that yes, it can't be shared by and accessed by the outside world, but also if it is what's called a multi-tenanted solution where your data is going to be held on the same server as somebody else, how is that being separated? And you want to ensure that there is no way that somebody else could access the same data that you have. Check what software you receive. There are a number of cloud suppliers out there who don't provide a full software solution in the cloud. They only partially allow users to perhaps access a portal in the cloud, but they still require you to download some of the elements of the application or to have a localized client installation. Now, again, arguably, that's not really a true cloud solution. It's moving maintenance and storage of the software back to you as a consumer. So do check with the supplier whether there is any need for any type of localized installation for the whole of the application that you're going to be using. Ask them how the updates are taken care of. So as I alluded to earlier, a benefit of cloud solutions should be that you get software updates more frequently, and usually they're carried out by the supplier and outside of business hours. If there is going to be an impact on those being applied during business hours, it's important to understand how you're notified, and it's important to understand what the service level agreements might be. It's also important to ask about testing, because if with a cloud solution you might not be able to prevent that update being applied, you could find out that you're actually at the front end of a software supplier's testing scheme. Many of my friends like to download the most recent version of the Apple operating software because they always want the most up-to-date functions, and I can understand that, but it does mean that they also suffer from all of the bugs that come out in those releases. And if you watch Apple's strategy, it is part of their release strategy. They're quite happy to issue a new version of their operating platform, and then they expect people to come back, highlight those bugs, and sure as eggs, you'll see a new patch being released very shortly afterwards. Personally, I tend to wait for that later patch. When it comes to your finance software, that's much more impacting. You really don't want to be in a position where you're ending up testing software and finding that there's a critical bug in that solution, which means that you can't use your finance system. So do ask how updates are applied, how they're tested. What happens if you need help? So there's two elements to this. There is the support element of the software itself, but actually, if you think about cloud, we also need to understand how is the cloud solution itself maintained, and if you need additional services, how are they delivered? What's the service level agreement? If you're asking that sort of question and you're getting a vague answer, that's definitely a red flag. A cloud supplier really should give you, at the very least, a guaranteed minimum uptime, and they should be able to describe what their fault escalation paths are and how quickly they commit to responding to whether there's a system down whether there's a serious issue. So it's important to make sure that it can explain that and that it's built into the contract. And find out what else is part of the package, either as an optional extra or something that is just part of what's delivered. Most cloud solutions don't stop at delivering the software, but they are also providing you with extra levels of security. They probably are taking care of regular backups. They're probably holding backups and rollovers going back for a number of days in case you need to roll back the software. They might provide additional connectivity solutions for you. So one of the benefits of having a cloud solution means that it's web-based, which also means it can easily integrate with other third-party applications. So it's worth exploring those elements, as that's very often areas where you need to provide your own solutions if you have an on-premise installation. So how else can you compare these cloud suppliers? Well, there's a few points here which are taken from a document that we have called our checklist. We'll be sending that to you as part of joining this webinar, but some key questions that you absolutely should be checking. What's the uptime? When did they start looking at developing their cloud platform? There's a number of suppliers that have been around for a long time, but there's actually some major players that have joined quite late. What you don't want to do is find out that you're taking a cloud solution from somebody that's still ironing out issues in terms of how they provide it. So ask them when their first customer went live, ask them how many customers they have in their cloud offering. If it's not a main part of their revenue, then it's probably not going to be a main focus for them in terms of how they develop the strategy for the business. So you could find that actually you are a lower priority by moving to their cloud. So a little bit about Bluecube and how we might answer those questions. We guarantee, as part of our contract, an uptime of 99.8%. That's in our service level agreement. For the last 6 years, we've had 99.9, and actually it's 999. We've been very close to a perfect score over the last 6 years. We actually started developing cloud solutions in 2008. Now, if I tell you that back then, Netflix wasn't around, Amazon Prime wasn't around, we were no doubt renting a video or a DVD from Blockbuster, then it clearly was a different world then. Now, we consume so much over the internet and through cloud solutions that we almost take it for granted. Our first customer went live in 2011, and now we have over 80% of our customers in the cloud. That's continually growing. I very rarely talk to new customers now who are even considering an on-premise solution. It is almost a standard default that obviously they're going to consider cloud. For us, the only remaining customers were really where they've invested heavily in their own infrastructure. What has happened with recent turns of events is actually even some of those customers have said, because so many people are working from home, they cannot maintain the same IT infrastructure, and they're considering moving across. And we've actually moved 3 customers very quickly into the cloud so that they could enable be COVID ready in March. So what have we covered? Well, there are a number of benefits to choosing cloud in addition to the simple access, and it's worth understanding whether those are applicable to you and what value you place upon them, because cost really doesn't give you the full picture. It's important to actually measure those benefits against what you need. Don't be shy from asking these technical questions. A good supplier should be able to explain these in a way that you can understand, and if they can't, then it's not exposing your failure to understand, it's more likely exposing their inability to be able to explain it properly. It's possible that it is actually exposing the fact that they don't have as robust a solution as they would like you to think. So I would really encourage you to ask these technical questions. And you've learned a little bit about Bluecube. If you'd like to know more, there's a number of resources that we're going to make available to you. So first of all, we've recorded this webinar and we will be sending you a copy of the recording along with the slide deck and a copy of our supplier checklist. So that's a much longer version of the questions that we've covered today. It also provides our answers to all of those questions. And as I say, I would really encourage you to use that as the basis for measuring against other suppliers to see if they really do provide a true cloud solution. I would encourage you to go to our website. We have a lot more white papers and articles on cloud. There's some really interesting stuff there in terms of how Oracle developed their technology and developed their cloud solution. It's a little known fact that Oracle was born out of creating, in effect, a cloud solution for the CIA. And I would encourage you to go to find that article and find out how and why it happened. Lastly, I'm available as a resource to you. I'm very happy to take questions. My email address is here in the slide deck, nicky.wilkins@bluecube.co.uk. You don't have to be interested in taking Bluecube as a software. If you just want to know more about cloud, I would genuinely be delighted to help you. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. We will be doing a few more webinars along these lines, unpacking other aspects of accounting software, and hopefully you can join us for that too. Thank you. Bye-bye.